Over here in the browser, we have an image which is 1024 pixels wide. It's quite suitable for desktop, but not so suitable for devices with smaller viewports because of its dimensions and its file size. So what we want to do is show an image with smaller dimensions on smaller viewports. And we can do this all inside our image tag in the HTML. And the reason we're going to do it inside our HTML is because this should affect our site before we even get to any CSS or JavaScript. So to load a smaller image on smaller viewports, we're going to need the source set attribute. So inside the image tag, we're going to use source set, and we're going to provide the source set attribute with a list of images, and in this case their widths. So I have a link to a smaller version of this image, so I'm going to grab that now. And I know that this image is 700 pixels wide, so I provide the source set with 700 and then W for width rather than px for pixels. After this, I'm going to specify the same image that we're loading in the source attribute and provide it with 1024. And now what's going to happen is the browser is going to choose which of these images is more suitable for its viewport. So let's take a look at what's actually going on here. We're going to open the Network tab inside Chrome DevTools, and I've disabled cache so that nothing is stored locally. And let's refresh the page. So as we can see down here, the image that we get back is the large one, 1024 pixels. Let's switch to an iPhone 5 or SE, which is 320 pixels wide in viewport width. And we'll refresh again. And this time we can see that the smaller image is loaded, the 700 pixels wide one. This may seem like a subtle change, but let's say the user is using a particularly slow connection. Let's emulate that now. And we'll emulate it with the large image first. Let's see how long it takes to load. So that took 7.32 seconds to load. And now let's do the same thing on the smaller viewport. And it took only 4.6 seconds. So this could mean a lot if you have a lot of images stacking up on your page. Another attribute which we can make good use of is the sizes attribute. And this allows us to specify a width for the slot that the image is taking up. In the sizes attribute, we're going to pass a media query and a width for the slot. And this can't be a percentage, but it can be something like 90 viewport width. Let's specify another one underneath for a different media query. And we can set a default one if there's no media query, and that can be the last one in our sizes. So let's see what impact that has on our image. So now by default, the image takes up 60 viewport width. And as we go down, we can see that it takes up slightly more of the viewport width. This can be useful because we may want to apply widths to these images before the CSS even loads onto the page. Lastly, it's worth mentioning that we can actually control which of these images shows depending on the DPR setting of the device. And we can do this using X descriptors. So in this case, instead of supplying the width of the image, we could say 1x. And for the larger image, 2x. And let's head back to our browser. And up here we have the DPR that we can get from the menu here. And when we set that to 1 and refresh the page, then we get the smaller image. And when we set it to 2, we get the larger image. So in this way, we can fine-tune which images get shown depending on the kind of device. It's also worth mentioning that if a browser doesn't support the source set or sizes attributes, it will just fall back to the source value and the default image will get shown.